With Aaron Rodgers expected to return to Green Bay in the 2021 season, where are you ranking Davante Adams? That and much, much more on today's episode of 2 Point Stance. But let's start with that, Lauren. We finally have some real news, and I don't know if I want to say closure, but it seems like Aaron Rodgers is going to be back in Green Bay. So I want to talk about this quite a bit today. Where are you ranking Davante Adams?
Let's go. Wide receiver 1. Let's go. I mean, he's right back where he was in the beginning. I mean, this doesn't really change much for him other than, like you said, not necessarily closure. We have direction, right? Like we kind of know what could possibly happen. So yeah, Davante Adams is right back where he should be in that stud elite category where he should be the first wide receiver off the board. And I'm glad that it's happening this way because there's only so many shakeups in this offseason that I can handle, like Julio Jones no longer being with the Falcons. Like there's these things I cannot handle too much of. So I'm really glad that Aaron Rodgers paid attention and listened to me, because I know he did, about being like, just stay in Green Bay, man. Stay in Green Bay so that, a black hole doesn't open up in our fantasy lives and just destroy us. So thank you, Aaron Rodgers. I'm here all week. You can call me.
And I want to give both of us a little pat on the back. Give yourself a pat on the
back.
Right,
yeah.
Because since the day this story broke about Aaron Rodgers, on draft day, that's when it, became apparent that Rodgers was going to leave and, he wanted to go to Denver. And you and I called that bluff from day one. We never really bought into it. And we were telling people, go out and just draft Packers players as if Rodgers is coming back, because that's what we both expected. And it seems like that's going to happen now. But as for where to rank Davante Adams, I couldn't agree more with you. Just because there was a little bit of uncertainty, I moved Tyreek Hill up to number 1, but I still had Davante Adams at number 2, because I think even without Aaron Rodgers, he still would have been, top 5, top 10 type of guy. But now that he has Aaron Rodgers back, you would be insane to put him anywhere besides wide receiver 1. And I think people are quick to forget because, in 2019, he had that down year. He was dealing with the turf toe, and he didn't put up the Davante-esque numbers that we are used to. But when you look at 2018, he had almost 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns, which it's like, wow, I mean, that should make him the wide receiver 1 right there. And then he improved on that in 2020, still almost went for 1,400 yards, and he caught 18 touchdowns. There isn't a wide receiver. Yeah, absolute stud. There isn't a wide receiver in the league that gets force-fed targets at the goal line like Davante Adams does. And that makes him the unquestioned, bona fide, don't get too cute with it, wide receiver 1, Davante Adams. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning into another episode of 2 Point Stance. I'm Dave Kluge, and I am here with Lauren Carpenter. We just finished up our NFL draft recaps, or I'm sorry, not our draft recaps, our division recaps. And that's perfect because we actually have a lot of great news to talk about. There was so much news this week. It feels like football season is finally upon us. But just want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Football Guys YouTube page at youtube.com/footballguystv if you aren't already. And I also want to mention that if you are into rankings and shows like this, you are a serious, serious fantasy player. And we all know that consistently winning at fantasy football is challenging and it takes a lot of time. So go to footballguys.com, get yourself a premium membership. What you can do is link up all of your fantasy football leagues to the Football Guys database and get customized information and rankings specific to your league. Go to footballguys.com, click on the orange button in the upper right corner that says join now so we can do the work and you can do the winning. All right, Lauren, we are starting the show talking about nothing but Packers because we haven't really, it's all just been guessing up until now as to what's going to happen. So let's talk about, we talked about Davante Adams, but this sends ripples through the entire Packers roster. So now Aaron Jones has finished top 5 in back-to-back seasons. So where are you ranking him? Because right now he's going in the late second round. Are you moving him up from that ranking now that we know that Rodgers is back, or is that pretty accurate?
I think that's pretty accurate for where Aaron Jones should be because it's not disrespectful for him to be in the second round. I think I could move him up maybe a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe early second would be good for him, but I don't know how much this swings Aaron Jones' needle per se, just because it's Aaron Rodgers, but it does help, I think. So for me, really, Aaron Jones is going to stay Aaron Jones. And I think, he does. Okay, I just said it wasn't disrespectful for him to be there. I just feel like he doesn't get as much respect as he probably deserves. So I really like Aaron Jones. So I do like him where he's at though. And hey, for up to me, I'd hope you fall some more so that I can get a great value on Aaron Jones because I love him.
Yeah, I love Aaron Jones at his current value. I know this is a redraft show, and that's specifically what we talk about, but this time of year, I do a lot of best ball drafts. I mean, I do a lot of best ball drafts, like a few a day. It's kind of, becoming a little bit of a problem for me, but I check my exposure and I am at 48% ownership on Aaron Jones. I cannot pass him at that ADP. He finished as the RB5 last year. He finished as the RB2 the year before in PPR leagues. And now Jamal Williams is gone. Jamal Williams was that thorn in the side that, we saw it on Twitter for the last 2 years. Hashtag free Aaron Jones. Everyone wanted him to get this lead job. And A.J. Dillon is there now, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. But with Jamal Williams out of the picture, I think that's just going to lead to an increase in passing game usage. We could see a career year from Aaron Jones as a passer, which is where he racks up the majority of his fantasy points. So I have him ranked as my RB4 in PPR leagues. And I am taking him over guys like Derrick Henry because of that passing game upside. I mean, I heard Mike Tagliere make this comparison almost a year ago now, and it's all I can think of now. He says Aaron Jones is just, a poor man's Alvin Kamara. And he is when it comes to usage in the passing game, the slipperiness, the elusiveness. He doesn't have that elite size or anything like that, but he just has a way of making plays and nosing out the end zone. And he's shown us that year over year. And this is going to be the third consecutive year that Aaron Jones is going to be a screaming value in your fantasy football draft. So if you can get him in the second round, don't leave without him. I personally have no problem pulling the trigger on Aaron Jones in the late first. I think that he's that good, and I think that the stage is set for another top 5 finish.
And let's not forget, too, Aaron Rodgers does really like Aaron Jones. And when there was that whole, I believe it was under Mike McCarthy when he was the head coach, Aaron Rodgers was coming out and saying, like, I want Aaron Jones more involved. I want him more involved. Now, granted, that was like 2 years ago now, but maybe more than that. Time flies. But that does kind of say something to me as well, that this could be a career year for Aaron Jones. If you think about it, I think Aaron Rodgers wants to make this another career year. So why not involve every single talented player that's around him to make it happen? So let's go.
Yeah, and I think the reason that Rodgers returned to the Packers is realistically, this team probably gives him the best chance to win a Super Bowl. Like, sure, he could have had some really fun playmakers if he went to Denver or Washington or all these other options that are out there. But at the end of the day, since Matt LaFleur has taken over, this team is 26-6. They've made the playoffs in back-to-back years. They've got a phenomenal record. They're going to go to the playoffs again this year. They're going to run through the NFC North like a hot knife through butter. I don't think there's anything that's going to stop Aaron Rodgers from dominating the NFC North once again this year. But like you said, with when Mike McCarthy was the coach, that was the big problem, was Aaron Jones's utilization. And I'm looking at the numbers right now. In 2018, which was McCarthy's final year, Aaron Jones saw 133 rushes and 35 targets. And then since LaFleur took over, he kind of has freed Aaron Jones, which is what everybody wants. 236 carries and 68 targets in 2019. And then last year in 2020, he missed a couple games, but he still saw 201 rushes and 63 targets. So he's seeing an increase in usage every single year. And Matt LaFleur definitely wants to get him the ball a little bit more than Mike McCarthy did. So love that call out. And this team is a contender, and Aaron Jones is a top 5 back. Davante Adams is the overall wide receiver 1. We mentioned him a little bit ago, though. A.J. Dillon. Where does A.J. Dillon fit in fantasy football? Does he have any purpose outside of just being a handcuff for Aaron Jones?
Oh, A.J. Dillon is so intriguing to me. I admit I have a slight fascination with A.J. Dillon because we just talked about how Jamal Williams is gone. That means there's something vacated for somebody else to step into that maybe Aaron Jones doesn't quite have the profile to do. And I believe that is A.J. Dillon. So it is so fascinating and so intriguing to him, which is why I really, really like him in fantasy. His ADP is spectacular. But he not only has the opportunity to become basically a league winner, God forbid if anything happens to Aaron Jones, but he also has standalone value as well. Maybe. So I'm not saying that to say like guaranteed that he will, but he could. So there are some things about A.J. Dillon that I like other than him just being a very solid insurance policy. He is someone I would not mind having stashed on my bench because you can take a late round on him. I want to see how they're going to utilize him. There's been a lot of hype around A.J. Dillon in camp so far. I'm excited to see what's going to happen with this squad because like we're talking about, they want to win. They want to win. They want to go. This isn't a rebuild team. This is nothing like that. This is something where they're going to utilize, like I said earlier, every single talented player on that team. So yeah, I want a piece of that. I really do want to see what A.J. Dillon can do. And again, worst case scenario, I have the person who is going to be usurping all of Aaron Jones' work, God forbid, if something does happen to him. So he is so intriguing to me, and I really, really like him.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. You can call it a
I was
fascination.
very passionate about that. I don't know if anyone who's not watching YouTube, you should, because I was like in the camera's face, like
leaning
way up
forward,
in there.
Lots of hand motions.
I was like, I was doing, I always do hand motions, but it was even more so than usual.
Yeah, I mean, he's an exciting player.
About it.
Exciting, intriguing, and you can call it a fascination. I'll go ahead and say that I have a full-blown man crush on AJ Dillon.
Yeah.
I love watching this guy play. I mean, he took the internet by storm last year just by showing up to camp in a pair of short shorts and showing off those enormous quads, and that was enough to get the hype train rolling. But the big thing is, Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, they had such similar roles. Jamal Williams was just kind of there to take the load off of Aaron Jones's shoulders. And now you've got AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones. And if you look at those two guys side by side, you wouldn't even think that they play the same position. I mean, they couldn't be more different than each other. So I think that AJ Dillon's role is going to be very different than the role that we saw Jamal Williams have. He's not going to be there just to spell Aaron Jones. He's going to carve out a role for himself. And the obvious role, when you look at his size and stature, would be the goal line back. And that does worry me a little bit. It could lower the ceiling a bit for Aaron Jones, but Aaron Jones, despite his size, has been phenomenal in the red zone since he's been in the league. So I'd be shocked if they pull him out of there, because they can, still get him going even in the passing game in the red zone. And I don't think that AJ Dillon has that upside. So I agree with you that I am trying to get AJ Dillon in any league that I can, because I think that he will get some usage. I don't think he's going to see passing game usage, but he's got the size and he's got the speed to break off a big play from anywhere on the field. So I think that if you're a wide receiver heavy fantasy football team, you can use somebody like AJ Dillon as an RB2. He's going to have a pretty low floor, but he's also got a pretty high ceiling. And then if anything does happen to Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon immediately becomes an RB1. I mean, all we've seen Aaron Rodgers do throughout his career, whether it's Eddie Lacy or James Starks or Aaron Jones, like all he does is produce running back ones. And I think that AJ Dillon would be in that situation if anything happened to
I just had a blast from the past with Starks and Eddie Lacy.
James Starks and Eddie Lacy. Yeah, those are some deep holes. And that's the thing, like Eddie Lacy wasn't that talented, but just like being tied to Aaron Rodgers, just being the running back on an Aaron Rodgers-led Packers team is enough
running
to
north-south
become an RB1.
helps. You know what I mean? Like go up and down the field, north-south, friends, not east-west. That doesn't do very much. So I'm glad that era is no longer in our fantasy minds. That's why I forgot all about it.
and I don't think AJ Dillon has that lateral quickness. He is only running north and south. He is an absolute hammer. So I love him. And I wrote an article. A juggernaut, exactly. But before free agency, I was very under the impression that Aaron Jones was going to leave. I thought, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Miami, Seattle, there were all these teams that made sense for Aaron Jones to go. And I thought that Jamal Williams was going to stay there. So I wrote an article that just completely left me with egg on my face, saying that AJ Dillon was going to be an RB1 in 2020, or I'm sorry, in 2021. And then free agency happened and I had to rescind that take a little bit, but I'm just enamored by this guy's talent. He is so much fun to watch. The comp to Derrick Henry is such an easy comp to make, but they're the two heaviest backs in the NFL, and they both have elite high-end speed once they get going. So I would love to see AJ Dillon unleashed in this offense at some point. All right, so we've discussed the entire backfield, but we saw a guy last year that kind of looked like he could have been a flash in the pan. Robert Tonyan had this insane touchdown rate last year, and everybody's expecting him to regress heading into 2021. But is he still a tight end one? Are you drafting him, ranking him as a tight end one, Lauren?
I think just by the nature of the landscape of the tight end dumpster fire that we have, I think by default, he'll be a tight end one. All he has to do is score a handful of touchdowns and he's there. I do kind of imagine there'll be some regression for Robert Tonyan, but I don't think it's going to be massive. I just think that there are other tight ends that I would like to take a little bit later because his ADP is creeping up. And especially with this Aaron Rodgers news, I think it's skyrocketing at this point. Now, would I blame someone for drafting him? Not at all. But don't forget, the top of mind awareness, recency bias. That's the word I was looking for. I knew I'd find it. we get excited about it because, like I said before, the tight end landscape is like a dumpster fire. It's so hard to find those guys that we really, really like at that position. So when you find one, you kind of don't want to let go. I'm going through this crisis with Mark Andrews. So it's kind of one of those things with Robert Tonyan that it's understand your expectations, understand his limitations, and then draft accordingly. Now, I don't think he's going to suck, but I don't think it's going to be as explosive as some may be hoping from him this year. That was very vague, but hey, I'll hedge.
And honestly, that's kind of how we feel with Robert Tonyan. He's a very,
I don't hate it,
confusing player. We don't really know what to expect from him. What we saw last year, we know that it's almost impossible for him to repeat what he did last year. I mean, catching 11 touchdowns on 59 targets, that is not in his range of outcomes again. I mean, that was just absolutely crazy. So what I expect is, this is a guy who really had to claw his way up the depth chart. Everyone last offseason, everyone thought it was going to be Jay Sternberger was the guy that was going to.
I know, wait, man.
Robert Tonyan just came out of nowhere and took that role for himself. And the Packers, they really like to home grow their players. They're not somebody that, they've never been a team that goes out in free agency and splashes on these gaudy players. They like to draft their guys, develop them, and give them an opportunity. And that's exactly what Robert Tonyan did. He was drafted, I forget exactly what it was. I want to say the 5th or 6th round. Or was he undrafted? I can't even remember, but he came into the league.
Was he undrafted?
Yeah, I want to say he was undrafted, and he played his first few years, on a very small contract. And this year, they rewarded him with, almost a $3 million deal. And that's more money that he is going to be making this year in 2021 than he has made in his entire career. So I expect his touchdown rate to drop, but I expect his usage to go up quite a bit. Once you built that rapport with Aaron Rodgers, it doesn't just disappear. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Robert Tonyan finish 2nd in targets on the team this year. The problem is his ADP right now is starting to creep up quite a bit. He was like the 7th or 8th tight end going off the board without Aaron Rodgers having any certainty of returning to Green Bay. And now with Aaron Rodgers all but guaranteed to be back in Green Bay, it wouldn't surprise me to see Tonyan sneak up into that 4th, 5th spot, end up in that Hockenson and Andrews tier. And I think that's a little bit too rich for me. So if you've got him in a dynasty league, or if you're doing a really early draft and you were able to nab him late, congratulations. But if he slips up into that tight end 5, tight end 6 territory in drafts, that might be when you'd want to pump the brakes on him.
Sorry, I'm looking through, and I things are ambiguous with Robert Tonyan. I apparently cannot do 2 things at one time. So according to the Google machine, number 85, Green Bay Packers, and then it says undrafted, 2017, career history, Detroit Lions, and then Green Bay Packers to the present. So,
wow, I didn't even realize he had a stint with the Lions. That must have been on.
Neither did I. So I don't know if this Google machine just lied to me or not. So that's why I wasn't going to say anything.
If he was on the Lions, it must have been on the practice squad, because
it had to have been.
Up on Pro Football Reference, we've got 3 years of data, and they are all with the Green Bay Packers.
No. He had to have played for the Lions, because as soon as he left, he ended up getting good.
That's how it goes.
So that must be it. I'm sorry, Lions fans. I totally just, took a stab at you right there. But yeah, so that's what I found from the Google machine really quickly while I was trying to listen and then also trying to research. Apparently, I am not good at doing those 2 things at the same time.
Hey, it's a very tough skill to manage.
It is hard.
But let's go ahead and switch. I just kind of painted a picture for why there is a possibility that Robert Tonyan could finish number 2 in targets on the team. But we've also got some wide receivers that could possibly step up. And it feels like we just keep falling for this trap over and over and over again, but it's worth discussing. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Allen Lazard, or even Amari Rodgers. Are those guys that you're rolling the dice on? Who do you think is going to step up as the number 2 wide receiver?
I can take a shot on Allen Lazard. I can definitely do that. He was dealing with injury last year. There was a lot of hope and a lot of hype surrounding Allen Lazard, and I haven't fallen off of that wagon yet. So I definitely could get on board with Allen Lazard. I do not mind taking a shot on him at all. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, MVS as we refer to him. No, I'm out. No mas. Amari Rodgers, not yet. I'm not ready for that. Rookie wide receiver, too many other talented players here. I think if anyone has a shot, aside from tight end Robert Tonyan, it's going to be Allen Lazard.
Yeah, I love Allen Lazard. And the tough thing for me is, like, all of these guys are weirdly tantalizing. And I know I
don't fall for it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Intervention time.
MVS has shown it. We see these huge
Once
boom
in a
games where he just
while.
rips off.
And then he has terrible games and he drops huge game-winning passes, and everyone is brokenhearted, from fantasy fans to real fans. Don't fall for it. Don't do it.
For that reason, I am probably out on MVS, because even if I roster him, I don't know if I'll ever have the gumption to actually start him. He's somebody that's going to sit on my bench, and then he's going to have 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then I'm going to try to trade him, and nobody's going to want him, and then he's going to sit on my bench some more. So thanks for talking me out of that, Lauren.
You're
I'm
welcome.
Probably out on Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Amari Rodgers.
That's what I'm here for.
Amari Rodgers is somebody who's very enticing, though. He's a rookie that has drawn comparisons to Randall Cobb, who is also rumored to go back to the Packers now, but we just won't even talk about that. There's a lot of rumors out there, but Amari Rodgers, I feel like he can step in that slot role and really develop a quick chemistry on the short passes. He doesn't have to get down the field, get in the ball in open space and let him do some work like Randall Cobb did. But you already called out Allen Lazard, and of this bunch, he is my favorite as well for a lot of reasons. First of all, just when you look at his profile.
I'm going back on Randall Cobb here. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, and I just can't.
No.
He is so annoyingly fantasy relevant. Just to the most annoying part where it's like not enough where I can actually roster you and start you, but just enough that you make everybody else worse. This is not good. I don't want to hear that he's going back to the Packers. Although his eyes are very beautiful, he does not help me when it comes to fantasy.
Well, he is. I was actually shocked by this. When you think Randall Cobb, I'm going to trivia. How old do you think Randall Cobb is?
I'm going to say 29.
All right. See, well, I guess I was just wrong. I thought he was like 34 or 35 years old. He's 30. Well, I was surprised that he was that young. I thought that he had a lot more miles on those legs, but he's just 30 years old. And, his best seasons were clearly when he was in Green Bay. So if he doesn't,
to be fair, I was totally going to say 35, but I didn't want to get stuck in that trap. So I totally just ruined.
All right. You felt the same
I ruined your punchline.
But yeah,
I'm such a great friend.
He was a beast in Green Bay, and if he does sign with them, he's still young enough that I'd definitely be enticed with him. But I just want to talk about Randall Cobb for a quick second, even though you already did. Look at his profile. This guy is 6'5" with blazing speed. And then you called it out last year that he had this surgery, and it wasn't a minor surgery. He had to have his core muscles repaired.
You're talking about Allen Lazard? Allen Lazard right now, right?
Yeah. And that's not something that you just bounce back from. You don't go in for core abdominal surgery and then show up a couple weeks later ready to play. So when you look at his splits from before that surgery and after that surgery, before the surgery, he was on a phenomenal pace. His 16-game pace was 91 targets, 69 receptions, 1,355 yards and 11 touchdowns. Now, granted, that is a small sample size. It's just 3 games, but in those 3 games, he saw at least 4 targets in every single game. He caught a touchdown in 2 of 3 games, and he saw a minimum 45 receiving yards per game. So I think Lazard, injuries have been a problem for him, but he's going to be a little more consistent than the boomer bust type of play that you'll see from MVS. So Allen Lazard, out of the 3 that we are discussing, MVS, Lazard, and Rodgers, Lazard is definitely the guy that I am most excited about.
I agree. Can I do like an on pace for my week? Because if you look at my on pace from Monday and Tuesday, I look like I'm going to take over the world for that week, but things tend to taper off after Thursday. And I'm like, oh, no more energy. I need to start doing an on pace for my week, like that recaps my Monday and Tuesday. I'm going to do that. And that's how I'm going to refer to it too. I am on pace to do X, Y, and Z this week.
I had a very productive Monday, so I'm just going to say, extrapolating my whole Monday out.
Yeah.
I'm on pace for 5 articles,
Let's
recording
do it.
10 shows.
We need to make this a thing.
Show sheets. Yeah, I'm on pace for a great week as a content creator.
Yeah.
I'm just
I
spent a lot of time on this
good about myself.
I spent a lot of time on this DK article yesterday. That's the only article I'm writing for the week. Maybe I'll get back to it.
There's a lot to take out of that, though. That's good.
1,700 words coming on DK Metcalf.
Oh, get ready.
And
Football
let me say,
guys, friends, let's go.
You guys that are really hoping for a breakout year from DK Metcalf, I don't see it happening, unfortunately. I think that he is more of, I don't even want to say it. Wait for the article to come out.
Teaser.
All right, everyone. If you're still listening after I just, crapped on DK Metcalf a little bit, I want to remind you to download the Footballguys mobile app today. If you haven't already, it can be used on all smartphones and gives you the same tools that you would find on our website and our Draft Dominator. Our Draft Dominator app will make sure that you have an edge above all of your teammates by customizing the advice specifically to your team. Download today so Football Guys can help you win. All right, Lauren, I feel like we can do like 3 hours just on news from this week. There's so much
I
news. So
know.
let's try to
Do you remember
rapid
when we would
fire.
have to scrape the bottom of the barrel for news in the off season? Now it's like, we don't have enough time. Quick, let's go.
Yeah, that's what happens when you launch a football news show. And when did we start doing this? May, April? There wasn't much to talk about.
No, it was
before the
at
NFL.
the end of April, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was before the NFL draft, and there really wasn't a lot to talk about at the time.
I know, I don't think there was.
Yeah, when we started the show, it was right before the NFL draft, and we started it with who was going to get drafted by San Francisco at 3rd overall. That's right. It was right before the NFL draft, and now we actually have a ton of news to talk about.
I know.
And
let's go.
Start with Saquon Barkley. He is on the dreaded PUP list to start the season.
I'm really sick of seeing that acronym when I'm going through all these rankings. I'm like, what? Why? This isn't. I don't like it. No.
So
I don't like it.
Is this changing how you're going to draft Saquon Barkley in 2021?
It absolutely is. It absolutely is changing. I'm avoiding now because he is a first-round draft pick, and I cannot make that risk. I cannot take that risk at all. Can't make that decision. I cannot pull the trigger to do that. Now, there is one piece or one silver lining, I guess, that I could take out of this is that he may fall. So if he does start falling in ADP because of this, which I find unlikely, but if he does, then I wouldn't mind taking a shot on him, let's say late second, early third, as like, okay, hopefully he comes back. But I don't like this at all. I don't like this because this is starting to turn into a trend. And that is upsetting, and I don't want to deal with the headache of it. So with that kind of draft capital, I need to have consistency, and I need to have someone who's going to be starting, and that's not Saquon Barkley, and that is unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. It's a bummer to see, and I'm kind of with you. Where if he keeps dropping in ADP, I think he's going to be a great value. Like if we know that he's going to miss the first week or two, and then can be limited, a couple of weeks after that. If you know that like all systems are going to be a go for Saquon Barkley by even like week 6 or 7, that still makes him, he can still live up to a second round ADP, even if he's not going to be doing much for the first few weeks. And right now he's starting to slip into like that 7th and 8th spot overall, where he was typically going 3rd or 4th overall prior to that. But just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with Stephanie Bell over at ESPN, and she is the injury expert and analysis there. And I was all in on, Saquon Barkley is a freak of nature. He's going to be able to bounce back from this. Adrian Peterson rushed for 2,000 yards and won the MVP after he tore his ACL. Saquon Barkley can do the same exact thing. And she painted a picture that this is a very different injury than what he went through. That there was some meniscus damage and some other ligaments were injured there. And the fact that right after he went injured, everyone was saying, yeah, Saquon Barkley, he'll be fine. He'll be back for week 1. And now as we're getting closer and closer to the season, they aren't giving us any timetable. Saquon isn't saying when he's going to be playing. The Giants aren't saying when he's going to be playing. And all of that is kind of, there's just a lot of red flags surrounding this scenario right now. And how terrible would it be if you do draft Saquon 7th or 8th overall, and it turns out that week 1, he's not ready. Week 2, he's not ready. He's just got that questionable tag next to his name every single week. And it's kind of like a Joe Mixon or AJ Green situation where you don't know if he's going to be playing every single week. So there's a lot of risk there. And, you've got to assume that he comes back, but everybody recovers from injury differently. He's had a few injuries over the year, and this is the first serious one. So, at this point, I'm still drafting him in the late first round when he drops there, but I don't really feel that comfortable about it.
Yeah, I'm not even doing it. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
In fact, what I was just doing right here was looking at his backups, I guess you would call them. I'm not sure. The people behind him on the depth chart. There's Davante Booker. That's a name. Let's see. Elijah Penny, Gary Brightwell, Corey Clement. Hi, Boo. And then Mike Weber. And then Sandro, not even going to try to say his last name. Starts with a P. Look it up. It's confusing, and I don't even want to butcher it. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. There's not a name there that I want to be like, okay, I mean, I guess I could take a shot on Davante Booker, maybe. But yeah, I might just be avoiding the Giants backfield altogether. Like I said, but unless Saquon Barkley falls, because there was one year in one of the drafts I did where Ezekiel Elliott was still having contract issues. I think it was 2 years ago or something. And he did fall in one of my leagues all the way to the 3rd round. Yeah. I will definitely take a shot in that situation when he becomes that kind of a value for me. But even in the first round, even if he keeps dropping, I just don't know if I can do that. I think I'd rather take somebody else. But I don't know. I'm not there in that draft. Who knows? Maybe I will, but I don't like it.
Good call out by looking at the depth chart, though. I think that I'm going to start doing that. I haven't really been targeting Davante Booker all that much, but even if you can just get a few weeks of him as a starter, let's say you're committing to going 0 running back and you just want wide receivers early and you're committing to 0 running back, I feel like Davante Booker is almost a guy that you need to draft, knowing that he could be the starter for the first few weeks, and then you start Davante Booker while you wait for that guy to pop up on waivers that you can start for the rest of the year. That's
and who says that Saquon Barkley is really coming back? Or if he does, is his snap count's going to be limited? What kind of, playing time is he going to be seeing? So is this going to be a running back by committee all of a sudden where they're trying to save Saquon Barkley? Who knows? So I think Davante Booker, out of all of those names that I mentioned, Davante Booker is the most intriguing when it comes to backups, if you will, to Saquon Barkley.
Well, let's talk about another big name coming back from an injury.
And thank you, by the way. I didn't say thank you for you complimenting me. I was just blah, 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 blah.
Of course. Well, Ben Baby is a reporter for the Cincinnati Bengals, and he's saying that Joe Burrow probably won't play in the preseason as he recovers from his terrible knee injury as well. So are you worried about his availability for week 1?
Not yet. I'm not surprised that he's not playing in preseason. I would be surprised if he were going to play in preseason. And if anything, that's just to, make sure that he stays healthy for week 1. I'm not at a place in my life with Joe Burrow and the Bengals to be worried yet about week 1, but that does not mean that I couldn't possibly be in the future. But we'll see. I want to monitor the news coming out of Cincinnati before I start freaking out about Joe Burrow.
I'm a big Joe Burrow fan this year, and
Me
I'm not
too.
too worried about the availability. He's very young, and that's the biggest indicator for when and how people are going to bounce back from injuries. So absolutely love Joe Burrow this year.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could be back in our youth and just bounce back from injuries and too many nights of imbibing? That'd be so nice. I remember what it was like to be young and youthful and
I hurt my shoulder over a year ago rock climbing, and it's still like I don't know if I'm ever gonna have full mobility.
At least you can say it was rock climbing. I hurt my knee because I fell down the stairs a year ago, and that still hurts. Like at least you did something fun.
You don't really recover the way you used to in your 30s, but Joe Burrow is still a long ways away from that. And I just want to point out that last year he more likely than not would have finished as a QB1. The start of the season wasn't phenomenal, but he was showing progression every single year. He was right at the fringe of being a QB1 when he went down with an injury. And now this year, we're just completely writing this guy off and pretending like he wasn't the first overall pick and that he doesn't have an elite group of skill players around him and that they didn't just draft his college teammate in Jamar Chase as the number 1 wide receiver off the board. There's so many good things working in Joe Burrow's favor. I mean, I don't want to say he's a lock to be a QB1 because nobody's a lock to be a QB1, but he's pretty darn close to it. And you can get him in like the last rounds of your draft. So I'm not worried about this injury. I didn't expect him to play in the preseason either. All indications are going to be that he is ready to go for week 1. This guy showed progression throughout the year. They beefed up his team this year. I am a big, big, big Joe Burrow fan for this year. And, if you want to wait on a quarterback, I think that Joe Burrow is one of the best guys that you can get in the late rounds.
Agreed.
We've got so much more to talk about, so let's switch to the Jets. We've got Connor Hughes reporting that Michael Carter is going to be the lead back for the Jets. I know that we have kind of cracked this joke a few times throughout the show that we don't want anything to do with the New York Jets, but if you got a guy that's guaranteed the league role and he's a rookie, are you drafting Michael Carter this year?
Depending on his ADP, sure, I will take a shot at Michael Carter. But what I am expecting is where Robert Saleh came from, which is San Francisco, which is a running back by committee, which is not what I want in fantasy. But now, does that mean I'm going to completely shut him out? No, I'll take a shot, especially if there's a lot of hype surrounding it. Okay, but I'm going to temper my expectations for what it is that I'm actually going to see in 2021. I'm just excited to see what the Jets can do overall with their new quarterback in Zach Wilson, with their new head coach, with just a revamped, energy that's coming out of New York right now. I'm excited to see where they go with this, and I wouldn't mind a piece of it. So yeah, I wouldn't mind if the ADP is right and it fits with how I've constructed my roster. Absolutely. Am I targeting him? No. But if he's there, I will take a shot.
Yeah, as the offseason is progressing and rookie fever is starting to die down a little bit, I do find myself buying into this Jets offense. Just a little bit. I'm not going crazy and trying to draft all the Jets I can, but they've become values at this point where they're dropping so far in drafts that, it doesn't hurt to take a shot on Zach Wilson or Elijah Moore or any of these guys. But I kind of agree with you on Michael Carter that I think that this is going to be much more of a committee than people want to realize. And this is no disrespect to Michael Carter. I think that he's a very good football player, but Tevin Coleman isn't a slouch. Ty Johnson isn't. Well, Michael Pirine, he showed some flashes last year. So I expect all four of those guys to be involved. Even if one guy is the lead back, what does the lead back role mean? I mean, that could be 35, 40% of the touches, which really doesn't translate to that much in fantasy. So when I'm looking at the Jets now, I'm starting to warm up on Zach Wilson a little bit. I'm warming up on Elijah Moore. Corey Davis is an opportunity to step up there. So there's some players that I'm getting excited about. And if you're in a bunch of leagues and you want to diversify, throw some darts at these running backs in New York. But if you think that any of them just being labeled the lead back gives them a safe floor, I think that you're setting yourself up for disappointment. And I expect it as well that to be a little bit more of a committee. I'm actually much more prone to taking Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson later in the drafts than I am to reach for Michael Carter.
See, I'm staying away from Tevin Coleman. Wade, he's just too aged. I don't want to call him old because that's kind of mean because I'm old too. So let's see. Got a lot of miles on his legs. That's a nice way to say it. And there's an injury, tendency. I don't want to say prone because that's another like buzzword. But Ty Johnson is another interesting name for me too. So if I did, let's say, miss out on Michael Carter, I wouldn't mind having a piece of Ty Johnson. He flashed pretty hard last year. And he had some big weeks. So I'm interested in Ty Johnson as well. Again, not targeting these players, but if they are available, I have no problem taking a shot.
Yeah, Ty Johnson was a waiver wire darling when who was it? Was it when Kerryon Johnson went down? I can't remember. Somebody got hurt in
Kerryon Johnson played for the Lions, yeah.
And I think that was, I want to say it was 2 years ago. Kerryon Johnson went down with an injury. Everybody was enamored with Ty Johnson. I spent like $45 fab on Ty Johnson, and I don't think he ever cracked 10 points for the rest of the season. That was one of my,
Isn't that how it always goes?
one of my worst whiffs on fab ever. But hey, sometimes you got to take it.
It happens.
All right. So last week we talked about Cam Akers and his, Achilles injury, which is just brutal to see for a young player like that. But now we've got Sean McVay saying that Darrell Henderson is not going to take a single snap in the preseason. Does this mean anything to you? Why would he even say that?
I don't know. I think I don't know. Actually, that's like not a single snap is a little odd, but if they're trying to conserve him and they're trying to make sure he doesn't get hurt, it makes a lot of sense. But he's not hurt, is he? Like, that's the first thing that popped into my head is they're like, did he get hurt? And they're not telling anybody because they now have a serious issue at running back. If that's the case, a big one. So I'm concerned in the respect that I'm going to keep my eye on it, but I'm not surprised because they do need to make sure that he's healthy for the regular season, or at least until they find somebody that they can add or someone steps up behind Darrell Henderson, which I don't know if anyone will.
There haven't been any reports that he's hurt, so I don't think it's that. I think what you started to say in the beginning is probably a little bit more true. I think that they just want to conserve his energy and his touches for the regular season.
He better not be hurt. I will be upset that I was lied to.
That would be disappointing. and in which case you'd probably see Todd Gurley, Adrian Peterson, one of these veterans come in and fill the role there. But right now, Darrell Henderson is a very capable running back. And I was furious with the Cam Akers draft pick last year because I was all aboard the Darrell Henderson hype train. And then they went out and drafted Cam Akers and just knocked it out from underneath me. But now, we can hop back on that. And I tweeted it out before the Cam Akers injury, but I said Darrell Henderson is my favorite. I love the term post-hype sleeper. It's like, the hype has died down and now this guy's a sleeper. And I feel like that's kind of where Darrell Henderson landed. So I had a lot of Darrell Henderson in my dynasty leagues and my best ball leagues, just because I thought that it was going to be a little bit more of a timeshare. And now with no real capable backs behind them, Cam Akers is injured, Malcolm Brown is gone. Darrell Henderson could step into that Todd Gurley-esque role that we saw a few years ago. So wheels up for Darrell Henderson. I love him and him not playing in the preseason. I think that just is Sean McVay kind of showing his cards that this is going to be our lead back. We already trust him. We've already seen what he can do over the last 2 years. There's no reason that he needs preseason. And I really like that. They're kind of giving him veteran treatment. Now let's talk about Michael Thomas because, it's starting to feel like 2020 all over again. He had this offseason surgery and reports are that he might not play until November or December. So what are you doing with Michael Thomas? Like
I
where do you even pull the
completely
trigger on him in a draft?
can't. No, I'm completely avoiding him. I am completely avoiding him. I do not want to have that headache yet again because I drafted him in a lot of teams last year and was heartbroken. I cannot do it again. And it's a shame because Michael Thomas is an exceptional wide receiver, but it's not just the injury and it's not just the fact that he's not going to be on the field, which is, of course, huge when it comes to fantasy because that's the only way you score fantasy points. But it's also the team in general, where they're going through something right now. It's still this competition between Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. Who's this? Whatever. So even if it was like, okay, well, it's definitely going to be Jameis Winston, so I'm going to take a shot. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I think there's a lot more. This is just my own personal take on it. I think there's a lot more going on with Michael Thomas, and I don't want to deal with that from a fantasy perspective. So I am staying away.
I couldn't agree with you more. Last year was tough, and when he played, he put up very serviceable numbers. But just given the contract disputes and the injuries and the mystery
and punching a teammate in the face and getting suspended for it, it's just it's like one thing after another. And I don't like that. One of the stable forces of that team, Drew Brees, is retired. I don't like it. I have to stay away from it. Even though I love Michael Thomas and the Saints are my favorite NFL team, I have to stay away.
Yeah, and it's impossible to deny the upside. We know what this guy can
For
do.
sure.
He's uber efficient. He's the number one target on this team with very little competition, and I would be foolish to ignore the upside. But his floor is literally 0 points for the entire season. Like there's a chance that you play him and it could be re-injury, it could be off the field issues. There's just so much risk with him that
starts the game, doesn't finish,
right.
Yeah.
And even when I'm sitting in the 7th, 8th, 9th round of my draft and I'm like, maybe he'll play half the season, I just can't find myself to draft him. It's just there's a lot of risk there. And I'm with you. Somebody's going to take the risk on him and it could pay off. And you and I could both look like idiots for saying that we're avoiding him. But that's just the way fantasy goes. Some people are a little more risk tolerant than others. And this is a risky situation that I just don't want to touch.
Agreed.
How about another risky situation, though? Marlon Mack coming back from his Achilles injury, which all eyes are going to be on Marlon Mack to see how he bounces back, especially those that want to see big things from Cam Akers throughout his career. But right now they're saying Marlon Mack is 100% healthy. And according to Zach Kiefer, he should be good to go by week 1. So is he going to cut into Jonathan Taylor's workload? Jonathan Taylor, the dynasty darling that everybody's falling in love with and drafting in the first half of the first round. Is Marlon Mack going to cut into that?
I think I'm going to lose every single audience member that actually likes me on 2 Point Stance. And I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to say, look back to what happened last year. I understand that Marlon Mack barely played any time at all, but it still took Jonathan Taylor a little bit of time to build up some steam and start making some waves. And Marlon Mack is no slouch. I'm not saying that he's awesome and he's an elite running back, but he's still, like, if we're going to use that term serviceable, which I loved, he's a serviceable running back. He knows this offense. And if he's healthy, 100% healthy, because coming back from an Achilles is very, very difficult to do. I like Marlon Mack, especially at his ADP. I have no problem with that whatsoever. And I think that is going to disappoint some people how much he does cut into Jonathan Taylor. I'm actually avoiding Jonathan Taylor because of this news, which I was kind of avoiding him anyway. But now this just solidifies the fact that I'm staying away from Jonathan Taylor. And I have no problem taking a shot on Marlon Mack.
Yeah, I think that Frank Reich has showed that he likes to use a committee of running backs. And they have, 2 very good running backs, and then they've got 2 very capable running backs as well.
Oh, yeah.
So I expect to see, Jonathan Taylor is going to be the lead back. But like we were talking about with the Jets, is a lead back when you're a part of a 4-headed monster really that valuable? So we saw last year when Marlon Mack went down with an injury, and then Jordan Wilkins, he wasn't seeing much field time either. It was pretty much just Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines. And the same thing that we see everybody discounting David Montgomery for, taking advantage of injuries to his backfield and having a soft schedule. That's exactly why everybody is discounting David Montgomery heading into this year. But everybody seems to ignore that Jonathan Taylor was in an identical situation last year.
Identical situation. Literally an identical situation.
Marlon Mack was injured and they had a soft schedule. And during that stretch, Jonathan Taylor absolutely feasted. But heading into this year, Nyheim Hines is still going to be the guy that's going to be passing the catches. Marlon Mack has shown that he's a very good running back, and I think that he's going to carve out a role for himself. And Jordan Wilkins isn't going anywhere either. So this is a situation where, realistically, Jonathan Taylor might be seeing 40 to 50% of the usage there. And I don't know if that's enough to justify a first round draft capital. So if Marlon Mack is 100% and there are, no concerns about his injury, that is a huge knock on Jonathan Taylor. And people are really, really quick to just block it out and get excited by last year's numbers, but I wouldn't be so sure. All right.
Exactly. I agree.
Another injury. I mean, and that's the thing right now is people got put on the PUP list. There's a lot of concern about injury with camps opening, but let's talk about Amari Cooper because he also has that PUP next to his name, and they're saying that he's not expected back until the Cowboys' third preseason game. Does this affect Amari Cooper in your rankings?
I think it does only a little bit. This is not going to be some giant knock. We're talking about the veteran treatment here. Amari Cooper does have that veteran tag to him. Why not keep him healthy? Make sure that he's going to be on the field for the start of the season. So it doesn't really concern me, but it's another situation where I'm going to keep my eyes on it. I obviously want to keep my eyes on what is happening with him pretty much every week to see what is going to happen with him. But I think it does knock him down a little bit, but not super drastically. But there are other pieces I think I might rather have. I might take a shot on CeeDee Lamb instead. I don't know. There's a lot of really good talent coming out of the Cowboys. So if you are an Amari Cooper truther, this is something you should definitely pay attention to. Don't freak out yet, but keep an eye on it.
Yeah, and that's kind of the camp that I'm in as well. I've been very strongly in the camp that this is Amari Cooper's team, and he is the alpha on this team, and CeeDee Lamb is going to be playing second fiddle. But now with Amari Cooper not practicing, that gives Dak opportunity to build a rapport with CeeDee Lamb during the offseason. So I don't know if I'm willing to change my rankings over this specifically, but it does make me a little bit more enticed by CeeDee Lamb, knowing that he'll be taking those, wide receiver 1 reps with Dak Prescott in camp. Another guy who appears to be fully healthy is Parris Campbell. This is a team right now that Parris Campbell.
I'm kidding.
You've got Michael Pittman showed some flashes as a rookie. T.Y. Hilton is now, I want to say 31 or 32 years old. And then Parris Campbell is somebody who has shown flashes as well, but has been, struggling to stay on the field. Do you think that there's a possibility that Parris Campbell can become this team's wide receiver 1?
I don't know. That means I have to really rely on Carson Wentz, which I actually do. I do believe in Carson Wentz, but there's also Zach Pascal or Pascal, however we say his last name. T.Y. Hilton didn't retire. He's still there. Parris, yeah. I mean, Michael Pittman is still there. I mean, there's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. So I don't buy it, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he did do very well. But I'm a very show me person. I'm from Missouri, show me state. I don't know if I really think that he's going to be the wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I struggle so much with projecting who the wide receiver 1 on this team is going to be. And
it's hard.
And when you look at draft position, nobody really knows. It's like T.Y. Hilton, Parris Campbell, and Michael Pittman are all getting drafted very, very closely to each other. I think that T.Y. Hilton, we've probably seen his best years. I want to say that those are behind him. Michael Pittman has that prototypical wide receiver 1 build and speed and all that fun stuff. But Parris Campbell is a guy who, the Colts have shown that they want to get him the ball. In one healthy game he had last year, he had 9 targets and, he was unable to score, but he racked up 71 yards. And he's somebody who has a lot of speed. He's a good route runner. And I'm a big fan of him. So I'd like to see him be able to step up. Let's talk about another wide receiver, though. And this is Anthony Miller. He was traded to the Texans. Does this move the needle for any Bears or Texans players for you?
No. I mean, not really. I mean, because for the Bears, it's Allen Robinson for me. And for the Texans, it's no one because I have no idea who's going to be the quarterback. So not really. This doesn't really do much for me. But best of luck to Anthony Miller because I had a lot of hopes for him last year. He did show a little bit of progression. He showed a little bit more maturity. I know he was working on that in the offseason. But no, I'm not taking too much away from this.
Yeah, neither am I. I try not to talk about my fandom too much, but I am a Bears fan, and Anthony Miller was somebody that I was. Anthony Miller is somebody that I was very excited about as a rookie, and he showed some flashes coming out of Memphis, and it seemed like he was poised to take over as the team's wide receiver 2. And it seems like every single week since that rookie season, I've just seen this guy regress, and I don't know if it's mental or I don't know. I don't know what it is, but not finishing routes, not hitting his breaks like he should. He just isn't the same player that we saw in college or as a rookie. And it gets tossed around in the Chicago media all the time, but he was voted by the team as the most likely to be late for practice. And that just shows what the team thinks about him.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. They did these like team superlatives, and Anthony Miller won most likely to show up late to practice. And
Lord.
it's just I don't think he really had the respect of his team. I don't think he really put in the hard work. And you have to work to make it to an NFL level. I'm not discounting that, but I just don't know if he has that drive that you want to see from somebody to progress every single year. And his numbers, his play on the field, everything shows that he hasn't really progressed all that much. Now, let's wrap up talking about some tight ends. And this is a guy that we've talked about a lot on this show, but Torrey McElhenney is reporting that Kyle Pitts is going to be a focal point of the Falcons offense. Is this, coach speak, offseason hype, beat reporters hyping him up, or is this something that we should actually be paying attention to?
I think this is more of coach speak and hype. But I also do think that there is a pretty hefty kernel of truth that could be in here, which wouldn't really upset fantasy owners because he's going so high anyway. He's a super overvalued tight end. But I mean, are we really surprised that Kyle Pitts is going to be a focal point in this offense? They don't have Julio Jones. They have Calvin Ridley, sure, but they have someone like Matt Ryan, and in that offense of constantly throwing, they didn't really get anyone at the running back room besides Mike Davis. So obviously he's going to be a focal point in the offense. So for me, this doesn't scream to me like, oh my God, he is. I'm so surprised because of course we knew this already. I just think it's maybe more for the team, and maybe more for Kyle Pitts. Like, don't worry, kiddo. Like, everyone says you're not going to do well because you're a rookie tight end, but we're going to make sure that you do, kind of thing. I'm not sure, but it's Kyle Pitts. He's really good. Now, whether or not that's going to translate into the NFL and translate into fantasy football is usually what we talk about, is whether or not he is going to be fantasy relevant enough to justify a high draft pick. But it doesn't mean that he's not going to be involved in the offense. Of course he is.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm feeling. I feel like I'm starting to back off on my Kyle Pitts hate a little bit as I'm seeing the way that they're talking about him in the offseason. With Arthur Smith becoming the new offensive coordinator in Atlanta, I was expecting them to run a lot of 12 personnel, which we saw him running in Tennessee, where you had Anthony Ferguson on one side of the ball, Jonnu Smith on the other. And that's, if they were expecting him to line up in line quite a bit, I was very nervous about Kyle Pitts and his availability or his possibility of getting up to NFL speed in a reasonable time. But now these reports are coming out that he's not going to be playing that much at tight end. So I kind of want to see how the preseason shakes out. But if that's the truth, if he's only taking like 20% of his snaps on the line and he's taking the majority of his snaps out of the slot or out wide, first of all, I think that we should change his designation in fantasy football. I think that he should have to go in a wide receiver slot instead of a tight end spot, but we'll save that argument for a different story.
Taysom Hill.
Right, exactly. And that's going to be a topic of conversation. It was with Marcus Colston back in the day on the Saints. It was with Jimmy Graham also on the Saints, where these guys are taking so many of their snaps out wide that it's like, how can we list this guy as a tight end? And I wonder if Kyle Pitts is going to end up being that same type of player because he is a phenomenal receiver. And the reason that I was worried is that he was going to have to learn how to block NFL defenders, which is a huge struggle for basically every rookie that comes into the league. So, I want to see how he's utilized in the preseason, but if he is in fact taking the majority of his snaps as a wide receiver, I will be moving him up my rankings just a little bit. And there's a very good chance that with Julio Jones being gone, he could just step right in and be that Julio Jones guy. And, that would be great for his value. It would be great for his development. I just don't know if he should be listed as a tight end in fantasy football, if that's what they're going to do with him. Well, before we sign off, want to talk one more time about the Footballguys Players Championship, because we've already discussed that you are a high-stakes fantasy football player by watching this show, and this gives you a chance to win $500,000. All you got to do is play in the Footballguys Players Championship. Entry is $350, or you can build 3 teams for $1,000 and get a chance to play in a league with a life-changing prize. On top of that $500,000 grand prize, they'll be giving out a total of $3.7 million to the winners. So find the league on FFPC and draft your team as soon as possible. Lauren, before we sign off today, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Just that it's getting so close, Dave. It's getting so close to draft season, to NFL season. It's like you blink and it's going to be August, y'all. It's going to be August soon. I'm so excited. I can't wait.
Yep.
I'm
It's
still
almost
planning
there.
on wearing my pink hair for, I can't remember who messaged me about that, but I will try to find a pink wig and like surprise y'all with it right before an NFL season. So I mean, I'll try. I no guarantees, but I will try.
Cannot wait for that. Well, I'm excited for football as well. We've got preseason in just a few weeks, and
It's crazy.
it's almost here. It's almost here. Couldn't be more excited. But want to thank everybody for tuning into another episode of Football Guys 2-Point Stance. Be sure to subscribe to the Football Guys YouTube page at youtube.com/footballguystv, where you can find all the rest of the Football Guys shows: the Audible, the Mailbag Show with me, Troy, and Victoria, the Dynasty Show with Chad and Jordan, the Dynasty Newsletter Show, the Power Grid, and more to come. Next week, we're going to have a ton more news to talk about as more and more camps open. So be sure to tune in next week, and we will see you then. Have a good one.